Hi guys, and welcome back to the Sun Devil Learning Lab. This is Mrs. Lopez and I'll be teaching you today. We're going to be dividing fractions by fractions. If this is your first time in Sun Devil Learning Labs, well, hi. And if you are returning and rewatching the videos as well, welcome back. So let's get to it. So we are going to be dividing fractions by fractions. So let me present my screen for you here. And first of all, I'm going to start off with the joke of the day. And my joke today is, how do you make tissues dance? How do you make a tissue dance? And you put a boogie in it. So that's our joke of the day. And the materials you're going to need today are a paper and pencil, and then we'll go over our objectives. So I'll give you about 2 minutes or however long you need to grab your materials. So pause your video now and grab your materials and come back. Our objective today is I can solve word problems involving division and division by fractions. A fraction by a fraction, and I can represent the context of a fraction word problem using variety of models. So I'm going to repeat the objective again, and I want you to repeat it after me. I can solve word problems involving division of fractions by fractions. And the second objective is I can represent the context of a fraction word problem using a variety of models. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to have some review. We're going to have two problems. We have a word problem and another problem I'll show you right now. But I'm going to read the word problem to you, and then I'll show you the second problem. So the word problem is, the local health club is advertising a special for new members. No initiation fee to join and only $34.50 per month for the first year. If Andy joins the health club for 1 year, how much will he spend on the membership? And then the second question is, I want you to change the following sets of fractions so that they have common denominators. So if you don't know what a common denominator is, that's where the denominators are the same number. So right here, we have the denominators. We want them to be the same number. That's all the help I'm going to help you with right now. And I want you to take time and answer these two problems. Pause for 4 to 5 minutes, however long you need. Okay, welcome back. So the word problem review, we have the local health club is advertising a special for new members. There's no initiation fee to join, and it is only $34.50 per month for the first year. This is very important when you're reading this word problem. We want to know how many months are in a year because it's $34 per month. So we know that in a year there are 12 months. So for this problem, you should have multiplied $34.50 times 12 because there's 12 months in a year. So you have $34.50 times 12 months equals $414 for the first year. And then for the next problem, we have to change the following sets of fractions so they have the same and the common denominator. So 2/3 and 3/4, we have 1/2 and 5/6, and we have 7/8 and 4/5. Your answer should have been something like this. We have 8/12 and 9/12. That's where you have the same denominator right here. We have 3/6 and 5/6. As you notice, nothing has changed with this fraction, 5/6, because 2 goes into 6 evenly. So you only had to change the first fraction. And then we have 35/40 and 32/40 because they have the same common denominator. So we have some vocabulary here today. We're going to learn about reciprocal or inverse and how to simplify. So a reciprocal or an inverse is one of a pair of numbers that when multiplied together, it equals 1. So when you multiply these two numbers together, you get 6 in the numerator, and when you multiply these two numbers, you get 6 in the denominator, and a number that is the same in the numerator and the same in the denominator equals 1. So it also could be known as reciprocal because you are just flipping these two numbers. So from 2 to 2/3, we're changing it to 3/2. We're just flipping the number. So 3 is in the numerator and 2 is in the denominator. And then the other vocabulary word is to simplify. This means to reduce a fraction to its lowest terms, where you cannot reduce it any longer. So we have 4/8. We know that 2 goes into 4 evenly and 2 goes into 8 evenly. So we tried that division and we reduced it. And so now it is 2/4. But we could reduce it even more. So we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2 again. And then we are reducing it to its final form, 1/2. 4/8 is the same fraction as 1/2. They're just a different amount. So this is reducing the fraction to its lowest form of a half. This will help you also later on in our lesson. So there's different ways to divide a fraction by a fraction, and right now we have this saying. We have leave me, change me, turn me over. So you're going to leave the first fraction, you're going to leave it alone. You're going to drop it straight down. You're going to change the division sign to a multiplication sign, because now instead of dividing the fractions, you're actually going to multiply them. And then you're going to do the reciprocal of the second fraction. So that's going to turn me over, and that's going to be 6/1. And that's the reciprocal of 1/6. Another way to remember how to divide a fraction by a fraction is this poem. So we have dividing fractions as easy as pie. Flip the second fraction, then multiply. And don't forget to simplify before it's time to say goodbye. So I want you to take a few moments, however long you need, to look over this page, and then I'm going to say the poem again and say these two sayings, and I want you to repeat it after me. Pause for however long you need. Okay, so we're going to repeat the first one, and then we're going to repeat the second one. So the first one is, leave me, change me, turn me over. Leave me, change me, turn me over. Okay, and then I want you to repeat after me as well. Dividing fractions as easy as pie. Flip the second fraction, then multiply. And don't forget to simplify before it's time to say goodbye. So those are our two ways that we have here for dividing fractions. And I'm going to show you my way on how I divide a fraction, and I'm going to show you a model as well. So we have 1/2 divided by 1/6. In our first step, we're going to turn the second fraction upside down, and it becomes its reciprocal or reciprocal. So the second fraction from 1/6 becomes 6/1. Then we're going to take our second step, and we're going to multiply the first fraction by that reciprocal. So we have 1/2 times 6/1. We're going to multiply the tops, and multiply the bottoms. So 1 times 6 is 6 in the numerator, and 2 times 1 is 2 in the denominator. So then we're going to simplify the fraction. It's basically saying how many times does 2 go into 6? And 2 goes into 6 3 times evenly. And this is my work. 1/2 divided by 1/6 equals 1/2 times 6 over 1. Those are multiplied and gave me 6 over 2, and that equals 3, because 2 goes into 6 evenly 3 times. So here's another way. So basically you're seeing this as 20. I'm going to go and show you a basic way. We have 20 divided by 5. So using this model will help you visually see the division process of fractions. When you see 20 divided by 5, it's actually asking you how many times how many 5s go into 20. So when you're doing your division and you have your number in the denominator or the divisor, it's asking how many times does that number go evenly into the number that you're dividing. So 20 divided by 5 is also seeing it as how many 5s go into 20, and that equals 4. So looking at this problem again, so we have 1/2 divided by 1/6. You're basically seeing it as how many 1/6 go into 1/2 evenly. So now we're going to look at these pizzas. We're going to see how many 1/6 of the pizzas, so there's 1/6 of the whole pizza because it's cut into 6 slices and there's only one, to half of the pizza. See if you've noticed they're still cut the same way, the 6. Now we just want to know how many of these 1/6 slices fits into this half of a pizza. You can count them. You could do the division and the multiplying of the fractions like we've done on the previous page. So your answer should be 3 because there's 1, 2, 3 slices in this half a pizza when it's split into 6 even slices. So in other words, I have half a pizza. If I divide it into 1/6 slices, how many slices is that? 3. So then we're going to look at another sample problem. We have 1/4 divided by 1/2. So if we're going to do that again, we're going to do step 1. So we're going to do this together. You're going to turn the second fraction upside down and it becomes its reciprocal, or the reciprocal if that helps you. Remember that you have to flip the fraction. So 1/2 becomes 2 over 1. Then in our second step, we're going to multiply the first fraction by that reciprocal. So we have 1/4 times 2 over 1. Whatever you multiply, you're going to multiply in the bottom 2. So you're going to multiply the tops by each other and the bottoms by each other. So 1 times 2 divided by 4 times 1. Or 1 times 2 in the numerator and 4 times 1 in the denominator. So that gives you 2 in the numerator and 4 in the denominator. In our third step, we have to simplify the fraction. So we simplify 2/4 to its lowest form is 1/2 because 2 goes into 2 evenly 1 time and 2 goes into 4 evenly 2 times. So I'm going to visually represent this to you as well. So we have 1/4 divided by 1/2. We're going to flip the second fraction and make it its reciprocal. So we're going to have 1/4 times 2 over 1. So we have 1 whole, we have our halves, and we have our 1/4. So basically in this, it's asking 1/4 divided by 1/2. How many halves go into 4s? We're actually going to have 1/2 of a half that goes into the fourths. It's a little bit harder to see it because it's a bigger slice, but half of the half is 1/4. And this is how it's multiplied out in my written form. So take a few moments to look over these problems, and then we're going to do another problem together, and then I have 2 problems that you're going to do by yourself. So our sample problem number 2. So we have a relay race that covers a half a kilometer, and each runner on the team will run 1/8 of a kilometer. How many runners are needed for a team? So I want you to think of your steps. I want you to write out your fractions first. Use the word problem, write out your fractions. So we want to know how many runners are needed for a team when one person on the team runs 1/8 of a kilometer and the race is half a kilometer. So our first fraction is half a kilometer, and we're dividing it by 1/8 of a kilometer. So I'll give you a few moments to try this problem out on your own, and I'll come back and we will work on it together. Pause for 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back. So now we should have written down your fractions in your division, and then also done the first step of flipping the second fraction. So I want you to write out the division problem and turn the second fraction upside down so it becomes reciprocal or reciprocal. So we have 1/2 divided by 1/8 because we have a half a kilometer and each runner is going to run 1/8. So we want to know how many runners do we need for the team to run half a kilometer. And then we're going to turn the second fraction, 1/8, into its reciprocal. So we have 1/2 times 8/1. So your second step should have been multiplying the fractions together. So we have 1/2 times 8/1. So you multiply the top and you multiply the bottoms. So you have 1 times 8 in the numerator and 2 times 1 in the denominator. So you have 8 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator. And for your last and final step of your division problem, you need to simplify the fraction. So 8 divided by 2 equals 4, because 2 goes into 8 evenly 4 times. So now I'm going to visually represent to you how this problem should look visually so you can have a better understanding why 4 is the answer. So we have 1/2 divided by 1/8. We're going to leave it, change it, flip it. So we're leaving the first one, we're changing division to multiplication, and we're going to flip the fraction to its reciprocal. So we have 1/2, and this is our halves and our 1/8. So it's saying how many 1/8 go into half of the whole. So with this being said, this is half the kilometer and this is 1/8 of the kilometer. So we have to fill in half. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 1/8 equals 1/2. And this is the visual representation. So pause the video for however long you need to see this visually, and then come back and we will do our individual problems. So I want you to try it yourself. We have 1/8 divided by 1/4. So do your first step, your second step, and your third step. Pause the video for 10 minutes to try it on your own. Okay, guys, welcome back. So we should have done our first step. So our first step is turn the second fraction upside down to its reciprocal or the reciprocal, if that helps you remember what reciprocal is, reciprocal. So we have 1/4 becomes 4/1. Then in our second step, you should have multiplied the fractions. So you multiply the first fraction, 1/8, by that reciprocal of 4/1. So we have 1/8 times 4/1. That's going to equal 1 times 4 in the numerator and 8 times 1 in the denominator. Or that's going to give you 4 in the numerator and 8 in the denominator. And then our third step. Our third step should be simplifying the fraction. And so 4/8 equals 1/2. Because 4 goes into 4 evenly 1 time, and 4 goes into 8 evenly 2 times. This is its simplest form of the fraction. So now we have the visual representation of this fraction. You didn't have to do this, but I'm showing you so you have a better understanding. So we have 1/8 divided by 1/4. We're going to keep it the same, change the division to multiplication, and we're going to flip the fraction. So we have 1/2, and we have our 1/4, and our 1/8. How many fourths go into 1/8 is basically what this fraction is asking. How many fourths go into 1/8? So if you're looking at this, 1/8 and 1/4. Half of the fourth is 1/8. Because half of this fraction is the same size and same amount as 1/8. And this is the steps visually multiplied out. So now I want you again to try it yourself. This time it's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be a mixed fraction. I'm going to read you the word problem, and then I want you to try it out yourself and figure out how many servings of beans did the cook make. So the camp cook made 1 1/3 pints of baked beans. Each serving of the beans is 1/3 of a pint. How many servings of beans did the cook make? I'll repeat it to you again, and then I'll give you some time to try it on your own. The camp cook made 1 1/3 pints of baked beans. Each serving of the beans is 1/3 of a pint. How many servings of beans did the cook make? Pause the video for however long you need to do this problem. May it be 5 or 10 minutes, however long you need. Okay, we're back. So the camp cook made 1 1/3 pints. So your first step to writing out your problem is you need to write out your fractions and what you're dividing it by. So we should have written out 1/2 and 1/3. So 1 1/3 divided by 1/3, because we want to know how many thirds go into 1 1/3. So you should have had 1 1/3 divided by 1/3. You're going to change this fraction into an improper fraction. So you're going to multiply 1 times 3, and you're going to add 1, and that's going to be your numerator. So your numerator should be 4, and your denominator should be 3, and then you're going to multiply it by the reciprocal. So your step 2, you should have done multiplying the first fraction by the second fraction. So you should have multiplied the tops by the bottoms. So 4 times 3 in the numerator and 3 times 1 in the denominator. That should have given you 12 in the numerator and 3 in the denominator. And your last step to dividing your fractions is you're going to simplify the fraction. This actually didn't come out to a fraction when you simplified. So it's saying how many times does 3 go into 12 evenly, and it actually goes into evenly 4 times. Because that's how you could simplify the fraction to its lowest term. So I'm going to visually represent it to you as well again, so you can see how this fraction is divided. So we have 1 1/3 divided by 1/3. We're going to change that fraction into an improper fraction, and we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. And then we are going to multiply it out. So this is your visual representation on how I did the problem and written out. This is a visual representation of how I wrote it out. And so we have 1 1/3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 1/3 and 1 1/3. So I want to go over our objectives today again. So this is, we should have been able to solve word problems involving division of fractions by fractions, and I can represent the context of a fraction in a word problem using variety of models. So we've used visual representation, we've written it out, and we've also done the actual math of it by multiplying and flipping and doing our steps. So we leave the first one alone, we change the sign, and then we're gonna flip the fraction. And then here are some extra sites and games that you can use to practice using dividing fractions by fractions. We have Khan Academy, we have math games, and that's fractions with models. So this is going to give you more visual representations. And then we have more math games by dividing fractions. So that is the end of our lesson today. I hope you guys had fun dividing fractions by fractions. You can try doing it by yourself. Maybe if you get pizza tonight or in future nights, you could practice your fractions by looking at the slices of pizza that you have in your box. Try playing those games that I provided and get more practice with fractions so it's something that becomes more comfortable to you. I hope you guys had a good day, and I will see you guys next time.